I wanted to acknowledge the outstanding display of judicial decision-making that you've all witnessed in this case and judicial temperament exhibited by Judge O'Donnell. We are humbled by his verdict, and I know I can speak for all Cleveland police officers that we are not emboldened by it. But having said that, I would like to state that it was my privilege to have represented Officer Brelo. I could not have done it without the team that we had of Tom Shaughnessy, Fernando Mack, and Marisa Surratt. They were all equal and important contributors. It's clear to me after a 37-year career that the civil rights lawyers that everyone talks about were on display in this courtroom. One of our citizens, was taken on by the state of Ohio. And the prosecution in this case spared no expense and was in fact ruthless. But notwithstanding that, we fought tooth and nail, as you saw in this courtroom. It was classically a case of David versus Goliath. And at the end, you saw lawyering at, I think, its very highest level in this courtroom, and I don't say that as a braggart. I'm proud to have played a role in this case, and I hope that all the naysayers out there, all these so-called plaintiffs' lawyers that claim that they're civil rights lawyers and never have tried one of these damn cases to a verdict, but they're out there for a money grab all the time. Officer Brelo, as the judge's opinion set forth, risked his life on that night. We regret and we acknowledge that 2 people died. None of us like that, and that in fact was a tragedy. But at the end of the day, that tragedy was brought about by conscious decision-making and lifestyles that those 2 individuals, irrespective of their mental states, voluntarily took throughout their adult lives. This society needs personal responsibility, and all of us need to look in the mirror. The NAACP has been at the forefront of the fight for civil rights. But the fight for civil rights should not be premised upon the color of one's skin. And many in this community that profess to be civil rights advocates and who claim all these lofty principles of setting innocent people free after they're wrongfully convicted and prosecuted, they haven't tried the case in the courtroom like we have, but rather they have rushed to judgment. They have violated all the principles of due process of law, not only substantive due process, but procedural due process. Throughout this case, the prosecutor has attempted to control each and every one of you. He's had his press agent, a former editor of the Plain Dealer, sitting with you back in the jury room as you're trying to communicate the information that's heard in this courtroom to the public, and they're trying to spin it to you. They have selectively filed outlandish briefs at the end of the day where we have not gotten a copy of them, and yet they've given the briefs to members of the media where they then spin their fairy tales about what happened in this case. I've never in my 37 years witnessed such an unprofessional and vicious prosecution of a police officer. He is not an organized crime figure. He is not a drug dealer. He's not a rapist, and he's not a murderer. And the attack turned personal on me when they tried to get me disqualified from this case. You were all here. Was there anything that you saw in this courtroom that remotely should have made me to be legally disqualified in this case? But they not only made it personal, they also then took it to the police officers that also were involved in this case, where they then chastised them and made a show out of the invocation of constitutional rights in this courtroom. It was all calculated. Ladies and gentlemen and members of the community, the mason of the blue wall of silence, the architect of the blue wall of silence was the prosecutors in this particular case. They coerced those officers into the invocation of their constitutional rights so they can keep them off the witness stand. Because if they wanted them to testify in this case, they would have done what they did with Sobolik and Farley. They would have immunized them, and the officers would have come in here to testify. And then the prosecutors could have demonstrated their abilities or lack thereof in attacking them. Because the truth is the best ally that one can have. So make no mistake about it, the author and the mason and the architect of the blue wall of silence in this case was the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office. The only entity, not the State of Ohio Attorney General's Office, but the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office initiated this prosecution. 12 officers have been exonerated by the grand jury, and Officer Brelo, in convincing form from this judge's opinion, who sat here for 4 weeks, as all of you did, has just found him not guilty. We are elated. We are nonetheless respectful and mindful, but you have to forgive us because this has been a blood fight, tooth and nail, day in, day out, sleepless nights, threats, intimidation, and coercion. And we stood tall, we stood firm, because we didn't do anything illegal, we didn't do anything wrong, and I'll be damned if I was going to let any bully push us around. I hope the African American community can understand and embrace that we understand and we are part of what their experience is about being mistreated, not to the extent remotely that they have been in their historical lives, but in this particular case, we stood toe-to-toe with an oppressive government trying to coerce and put away a law-abiding citizen who did his job in this case, even though there were tragic circumstances and outcomes. And we fought, the four of us, against all odds, and I am so happy that we can walk out of this courtroom with our heads held high. One of my favorite movies is Scent of a Woman with Al Pacino, and Al Pacino said that there is nothing like the sight of an amputated spirit. There's no prosthetic for that. Well, there were about 12 officers in this case who have had amputated spirits because of the coercion of the prosecution in this case. But Michael Brelo stood tall, and his attorney stood tall, and we fought tooth and nail, and it's over and done with. I wish you all a fond farewell. God bless you.
Thank you, Pat.